What is up, guys? Doing another one down solo with no downs. This time, I'm hitting up Golden Grin Casino, and I have finally, I've finally done it. Now I know what you're thinking. Wow, Usual must have put a lot of time and effort into this heist if he's so excited about getting this run. And I am, don't get me wrong. However, that's actually not what I'm so excited about. So, the day that this is, maybe not the day this is uploaded, but the day I recorded this, pretty late in the night, as I say all the time, I'm a night owl. I can't help it. Anyway, so, shoot, I lost my train of thought there for a second. See, this is how you know it's late at night. I'm losing my train of thought constantly. Anyway, so what had happened was, some things had been changed in the game, particularly concerning damage grace period. And also some perk decks had gotten some minor buffs. In some regards, some had gotten nerfs, and so on and so forth. I might do like a one-down tips, quote-unquote, video. I put tips in quote-unquote, by the way. A one-down tips video about that in the really near future. And so, oh, by the way, I placed explosives in that specific spot because I was hoping it would be that location, so I just test that one first because I like it better. Thankfully, I did get that one for the sake of this run, so I was pretty pleased about that. And here I'm going to check the storage rooms and things like that to get the fireworks, so I can go ahead and get that objective done since you can do it in advance. Anyway, so day of this recording, perk decks have been nerfed, changed, damage grace period has been changed ever so slightly. I'm going to talk about that in the future once I know a little bit more about it. Once I know more about exactly what was changed. So that way I can give a very in-depth explanation about it. So anyway, thankfully in this particular update, well, not thankfully, but in this particular update, Kingpin wasn't altered in any way. Sicario had an interesting change made to it where the smoke cooldown was increased. I'm sorry, not the smoke cooldown. Well, the smoke cooldown was increased, but the amount of time that the smoke was active was increased from 6 seconds to 10 seconds. And its cooldown was likewise increased. The cooldown was increased from 30 seconds to 60 seconds. So in the grand scheme of things, even though you do get more smoke, it's actually a bit of a nerf to Sicario, not only because that's an absolutely insane cooldown, even though you can, knock some seconds off of that by getting kills, which is nice, don't get me wrong. And it still doesn't feel, it feels relatively balanced, and I didn't feel like it was relatively busted before. Now, it was when it was first released, because it was giving buffs wrong. Because giving double the buffs all the time, which some people in my comments on some videos had made apparent to me, and, things like that, which is perfectly fine. But after it was fixed a few days ago, and, before today, it felt fine. It felt like a decent perk deck that was usable, although in its current state, I actually wouldn't put, even though it has really good qualities, maybe I just suck at playing with it, I'm not quite sure what it is yet. However, I just really don't like the feel of playing with Sicario. I feel like when I'm using Sicario, I either want to be using Dodge or I want to be using Kingpin. So I think I'm going to practice with it a little bit more, try to get a little bit better with it and see if I can't get some good runs with it in the future. But for the moment, I just don't really have a preference for it. My preference is still towards Kingpin, regardless. Kingpin wasn't changed at all in this update, so Kingpin still has, 6 seconds of invulnerability and 30-second cooldown period. I think Kingpin is in a very comfortable place right now. The reason I bring that up was after today, I was like, you know what, I'm going to try some slightly different loadouts for weapons and things like that I can use in my solo runs. Now, of course, I do the kooky one-down build videos where I try weird things and try to make them work on one down and things like that, but, in this case, I was actually actively looking for things that I could use for, like no-down solos and videos I try to take very, very seriously. Not that I don't take my other videos seriously, that's not what I'm meaning, but in the sense that, these are meant to be, how do I word this? You know, the kooky builds are for fun, they're for laughs, they're for, hey guys, look what stupid thing I somehow managed to make work, like the minigun crits. I had so much fun making that video. It was one of my personal favorites, probably one of my favorite videos I've ever gotten footage for, period. Even up until this point, I had so much fun making that video. And the videos like this are more, like this video in particular, are more made not because I'm trying to just have a plain old good time, which I am having a good time, otherwise I wouldn't do the runs in general, but it's also kind of a, oh hey, look at this thing that I can do that not everybody else can do, you know. It's supposed to, almost in a speedrun type sense, I've made that comparison before. This is more of a, what I would call a difficulty run, showing that like, hey, given these circumstances and these constraints, I can still complete this mission. Regardless, I've been working with various different build setups and weapon setups and perk decks, not trying to find what the most meta thing was, because there are a lot of things that work in Payday, and there are a lot of things that you could put in the quote-unquote meta. However, I wanted to find something that best suited my play style, my way of playing, and that made it easiest for me as a player to get done what I wanted to get done, to accomplish the goals that I wanted to accomplish. And so when I first started doing these videos, I started with Rogue. I started using dodge builds, and I was using the setup that I believe, well, that I had got from Kenzo, that I believe he had originally, he was the one who originally made it, or popularized it, I guess you would say, with the using the Cavity 9mm, which is actually one of my favorite guns, and using the Dragon's Breath Loco, which became one of my favorite ways to use that gun. Had to be careful of the dozers here. The dozers are kind of really bad for Kingpin since they do more damage than you can heal yourself for with the injector, so you'll just die instantly even if you're... So if my armor is broken, and even if I have my injector up, the dozers will kill me in one shot, so I try to be very careful around dozers. They're generally more of a threat to me than any other unit, regardless. So, you know, throughout my videos, I've changed setups ever so slightly. I've started using Kingpin with Sue, was probably one of the biggest changes I made in my builds. And, you know, I've been playing around with some pistol setups, I've been playing around with various different things, and I have finally come across a setup, and I believe a build, that just really suits the way I play, and I had so much fun using it, and it just felt so great. And as you've noticed, I'm using a stakeout and I'm using a Krinkov. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm just using an automatic shotgun primary with a large magazine, silencer skills, you know, overkill, and so on and so forth. In this particular build, I had Berserker, which didn't come in too much usage because I stayed above half health for most of the run, if I'm not mistaken. I fluctuated a little bit. I did tweak the build after this video, and I made it, in my opinion, a little bit stronger. This was supposed to be just a test run to see how this build worked out, to see if it was something I could use. Using the Krinkov as a dozer slayer of sorts, and using the stakeout to deal with enemy units. I don't have any explosives, but I found it to be okay because I picked up Shock and Awe aced. I almost said ASIC. Shock and Awe aced, so that I could just knock shields over, essentially. And so... I found it to be a really effective setup, and again, I had so much fun running it. And I had tried this heist in particular with some various other setups. I would get pretty far in it, and then I'd lose it because I'd get two-shot by some schmuck when my injector was down, and my first aid kits were maybe on a cooldown or something like that, or I tried to push an objective a little too hard and paid the price for it. But it all ended up working out. In this run, everything just kind of came together. I really like this setup because the stakeout has a very large magazine with my skills and the way I have it set up. I like have the weapon modded, I mean. And allows me to, as you can see there, knock shields out of the way. It knocks pretty much all enemy units over, aside from medics, I believe, who don't have any kind of hurt animation for anything except for like poison. So, but even then, medics aren't really that big of a threat to me as far as killing me is concerned. Now they can, if I'm being lackadaisical, but in most normal circumstances, medics don't pose a lethal threat to me. They're more of an annoyance. And so the stakeout is great for dealing with all Unix, but... Unix? I didn't... slip of the tongue. Apologies to any Unix out there. Anyway, for dealing with standard units, except for, of course, bulldozers. Shotguns are notoriously, well, they have a stigma for being bad for fighting off bulldozers due to their lack of DPS, which the stakeout is not missing in any way, shape, or form, and it actually is, the stakeout, as far as shotguns are concerned, are really good for taking out dozers. However, I can't make a crits build with the stakeout. I could do it with the Yzma, and I might have some builds like that with the Yzma in the future where I utilize crits a little bit. You know, I kind of want to still continue to modify and tweak the build a little bit, get some variations out of it. You know, I like changing things up all the time, but I'm really satisfied with how this build and weapon loadout turned out. It just, well, honestly, as I was running through this heist in particular, even though I had done runs of it before and it had given me some difficulty at certain parts, it felt like a breeze this run. I just mowed through units. So, like in that certain instance right there, an enemy pops around the corner, kind of catches me off guard for about half a second, and I get a shot off with my stakeout. Now, if I was using a different weapon, maybe the cavity, it's not an absolute guarantee that that enemy would fall over from being hit with a headshot with the cavity. So maybe they'll go into a hurt animation, maybe they won't. If he doesn't go into a hurt animation, I actually stand a good chance of getting killed just by that one unit because my injector wasn't up. Now, my injector was ready to be used, and so I've trained myself to, you know, have the reaction time to just hit my throwable button whenever I see my armor break. In certain circumstances, not in every circumstance, but I usually stand ready if I need to and try to react on depending on the circumstance. And that unit could have theoretically killed me, but due to my weapon loadout, I was able to knock him over and just make short work of him, and everything was all fine and dandy. The lack of a grenade launcher, really, I didn't feel the impact of it, to be entirely honest. And as I was playing through this, I was like, would a grenade launcher actually benefit me? Wouldn't it just make it harder to kill dozers and all that kind of stuff? So, I really, I think I got a lot out of this weapon loadout. And I can get some variability out of the secondary I use. There's a bunch of different Krinkov-esque, or a bunch of different high-damage SMGs similar to the Krinkov that I could use. Things like the Tatanka, is it the CMR or the CQR? I can't remember what it's called right now, or even like the real-life equivalent of it. It's the SMG that came with the biker heist. And then there's like the Swedish K. There's a bunch of different submachine guns that would work for the secondary role if I just wanted to, you know, switch things up. So, certain parts of this heist, it was pretty easy to maneuver around to different levels of the map to get away from enemies, just to get a little bit of breathing room. That changes as soon as you start up the BFD, because when you start the BFD, enemies spawn change a little bit, and they'll start spawning from upstairs so that they can hit the battery pack, or the battery packs that you have plugged into the wall. Converts have a really bad habit of getting stuck upstairs, I've noticed on this map. However, I was really fortunate in the fact that one convert stuck with me for pretty much the entirety of the heist. One did position himself upstairs, but he actually got stuck in a position that was close to one of the power outlets that needed to be guarded. I did buy the extra battery asset when I was starting this heist, because it was just really aggravating to defend both the BFD and 2 power sources, so I just cut it down to having only having to defend 1 power source and the actual BFD itself. And thankfully, because of where my convert positioned himself, I was actually able to, I never had to go defend. No, I think I maybe had to, if I did have to restart the power source once, or if I had to restart the BFD once from upstairs. Most of the restarts, though, were downstairs, like at the actual interface of the BFD. I did have engine optimization, the one that only shaves off 1 minute. For those of you who don't know, there are two different quote-unquote engine optimizations that you can get. I believe one is a better arc cutter and one is engine optimization. I believe I have those names right. The engine optimization, which is the one that I'm using, shaves a minute off of the BFD. I believe it takes it from a 7-minute drill to a 6-minute drill, and then the better arc cutter takes it from a 7-minute drill to a 5-minute drill. You can't get both. You used to be able to get both, but it was actually bugged, because you weren't supposed to be able to get both. You were only supposed to be able to knock it down to a 5-minute drill. So people actually used to get both and waste a whole bunch of, well, waste 2, technically. Waste 2, what do you call it? I know what they're called. I can't think of them right now. I was just talking about them. Asset points, I guess. Favors, yeah. They would spend 2 favors on engine optimization, but it actually wouldn't save them any time. And so it's just a complete waste of points. But they fixed it to where it's incompatible. Like, you can't pick both of them. It says that this is incompatible with another favor or something like that. So anyway, I did shave a minute off of this drill, which was nice because it takes forever for the BFD to finish, obviously, because it's like a 6-minute thing, and it constantly gets interrupted. But the position that I had the drill was really favorable to me anyway, because I was able to defend it pretty easily from the bathroom that I was located in. If it would have been the other drill position, I could have defended it from the VIP room. However, for some reason, I just don't prefer it. I mean, there's not really any reason to. They're equally as defendable, but I, just as a person, have a preference for defending it from the bathroom instead of the VIP room. I don't know. It's weird. 7-minute timer starting now. I had a fair amount of interruptions as I was doing this. It was that 7-minute timer, but I meant to say 6-minute timer. So I had a fair amount of interruptions. The BFD was stopped several times, never due to like running out of coolant or anything like that. For the most part, it was just enemies interacting with the interface and causing me a bit of heartache. The escape I chose at the beginning was the blimp escape. I chose the blimp escape because it took fewer points than the van escape did, and I was only planning on coming out with a dentist's loot anyway. Honestly, I probably could have picked the limo escape and saved myself even more points to spend elsewhere, but I figured, by the time I'm getting close to the end of this run, I have a tendency to get the shakes, depending on how intense the run has been or how many times I've tried it. You know, combinations of things like that. So knowing that this was going to be a very long heist, more than likely, I was preparing to kind of make the end as much of a breather on myself as possible. Of course, I could have chose the van escape, but it's just as easy to get to the top of the thing as it is to get to the top of the drill as opposed to the van, and I was able to pick up engine optimization and the extra battery, which saved me more time in the long run. I feel like I had a pretty good balance for favors and assets and things like that. So overall, I was pleasantly surprised at how smoothly it all went and worked together and stuff. Of course, I try to keep first aid kits kind of flittered about this area that I run to and fro from. You know, I have some over there by the BFD. I had one by the winch that I hadn't got to use yet, or that I didn't have to use, thankfully. I decided to throw one down here and wait until I died, quote-unquote, before bolting over to this restroom. Not for any particular reason, other than I didn't want to get halfway across and almost to the bathroom and then get shot and die before I can get into cover, so I just decided to, you know, increase my odds a little bit by allowing myself to have full health. The reason that I didn't hit it, like use it myself instead of waiting to be shot before I used it, was simply because it could have happened that I was in the process of interacting with it, and then I get shot in the midst of using it. And so right after I use it, I end up taking health damage again anyway, and could end up going down because my injector wasn't ready to be used. So I just let myself be charged from it by letting uppers do its thing, which I find to be an extraordinarily handy skill for these runs, and the fact that I can use it in those circumstances. Dozer gets eviscerated right here. One change that I made in the build, I was talking about that earlier, is like I said, this build was very experimental, and this is not an optimized build, and I have a much better one planned out in the future. Thankfully, Dozer's rate of fire is slow enough that if you're not dealing with multiple and other enemies, usually they can't just blow you up. They usually can't just kill you by themselves. They're most dangerous when you're surrounded by a bunch of enemies who are breaking your armor, and then the Dozer just gets a lucky shot on you while your armor is down. By themselves, the Dozers aren't, like, a single dozer is not that big of a threat. 2 dozers are pretty scary because one can break your armor and then the other one can just shoot you and kill you. Dozers combined with a whole bunch of enemies is a situation that you need to get away from stat, because the enemies will break your armor and then the dozer will break your health. And that's all there is to it. I've lost runs before running across an area with my injector on, thinking like, I'm invincible! And then, you know, of course my armor's broken when my injector's up because everyone's shooting at me, and then a dozer just kind of, you know, 5 or 10 meters away just says, no, I think not. just downs me. So it's a bit of a bummer, but anyway. One of the changes I made to this build is I get rid of Berserker and I get rid of those fugitive skills because they don't serve me any real purpose. Because I stay above half health, like I said, for most of the heist, because I do take Hostage Taker. Because it increases my survivability. Because if I'm doing no downs, you know, obviously I want to stay at closer to max health as much as I possibly can in order to save myself some, to, you know, give myself a few extra shots in case I get snuck up on while my injector isn't ready to be active. Uppers saving me yet again. My convert that was down here with me died, so I decided I needed to get a new one. Ducked behind the wall to get away from the flashbang. I'll talk about my weapon selection in just a second after I recollect my thoughts about what I was saying concerning the skills. Oh, right. So the skills, I ended up picking up Overkill Aced as opposed to Berserker and all that stuff, and I ended up acing Silent Killer. I aced Silent Killer because it does save me. Thought this taser was going to ruin the run, but thankfully I got in here before anything bad happened. Which Uppers would have picked me up because I think I had a first aid kit over there in front of the BFD, but still, better safe than sorry. So I picked up Overkill Ace. The reason I picked up Overkill Ace, one, for the weapon swap speed, which is helpful, you know, when I'm dealing with dozers and I need to kill them very, very quickly. Taser again, just being a pain in the butt. Oh, I didn't have one there. Never mind. That's when I laid it down. Never mind. So I could have died earlier if that, by that taser. I could have lost the run. That would have been a bit of a bummer. So anyway. Gosh, I really need to like finish my original thought and then talk about what happened. I picked up Overkill Aced because of the increased weapon swap speed, which is of course just really handy, but for the added bonus of it spreads the 75% damage buff to whatever other weapons you're using, so long as it fits the constraints. In this case, it fits the constraint of my SMG, which will allow me to kill dozers in way fewer shots, which is definitely something I want. So that's a change I made after I made this video. When I was standing on the drill right there, I knew where the starting point of the laser was. It was the little part that sticks out kind of on the right hand side. There was the part that I was basically standing on. So I was checking the progress of the drill. At this point it was a little more than halfway done. Just trying to get a mental gauge of how long it was going to take. I'm not sure why I didn't go ahead and take the coolant there on the left over to the... Oh, that's why. What was I doing? Oh, I know what I was doing. I was, oh gosh, what is going on with the video right now? Oh, I remember. I had went Alt-Tab for a second because I had a stream running on my side monitor, and something had changed, like it went off or whatever. So while I had a moment to breathe, I decided to Alt-Tab and like change it and find a new stream or whatever. And then when I came back in, the Payday was acting all funny, and I was like, please don't crash while I'm like so far into this run. I don't want to lose it because of something stupid like that. Thankfully though, nothing bad happened, and I was able to have the stream running in the background to keep me company, and run went on as normal. I just leave the streams running on the side just because it keeps me company. It sounds really lonely. It's not meant to sound lonely. It's kind of just like having a TV on in the background. It's just there to be like static background noise to prevent me from getting too, like, I can stay focused if I keep the volume low enough. Yeah, I can stay focused on the game, and it provides enough background noise that it kind of calms my nerves just a little bit. So, cops were being slightly annoying when it came to getting BFD broken. I didn't run out and repair it because I knew dozers were here and I wanted to go ahead and try to get them killed before I dealt with anything else. Dozers are definitely always a... When dozers show up, they are the primary goal. I have no other objectives when dozers show up other than get away from dozers or kill dozers. So it took a few shots with the stakeout to kill the dozer. If he's not in your face, it works really well. That's definitely why the SMG is a bit more handy. I flirted with the idea of bringing maybe the Commando rocket launcher or the HRL-7 rocket launcher. Thankfully, I'd laid that first aid kit down there earlier to kind of save me as I was running into this restroom. But I don't think either of those rocket launchers, since the dozers have 18,000 HP, according to, you know, my HUD, and then the HRL-7 does 10,000 damage. It would take 2 shots, and it's really just not worth the time investment. The SMGs, I think, ultimately are just going to have stand a better chance of killing the dozers. I didn't lay down another first aid kit over there because I was pretty sure I wasn't going to have to go back over there anymore, and I was going to try not to go over to that restroom anymore. And I was also kind of starting to run low on first aid kits. I start being a little more cautious about where I throw them down when I'm at 6 or below. Especially since I still had to go down into the vault, drill open the door, you know, get the dentist loot, and so on and so forth. Jumping up to see if I can get the cloaker. I was pretty sure the BFD was getting close to completion right about now. I was going to wait for the coolant tank to fill up with water before I ran out there and restarted it, but I was like, the other coolant tank should keep it up long enough to let it last until I can get my injector recharged so I can carry the other coolant tank in there. At this point, my other convert had died again. One of the changes made in the update I talked about, converts had a slight reduction in their damage, and a slight reduction in their damage. It went from like 100% extra damage to like 35% extra damage, which doesn't really impact them all that much. And then a slight change to their damage reduction modifiers, but if you look at the numbers, it actually doesn't change the amount of damage they take all that much. I mean, nothing meaningful. It's actually kind of helpful. I thought it was more of a buff than a nerf. And the reason I think it's more of a buff than a nerf is because even though the converts are dealing less damage and they're taking more damage, or quote unquote taking more damage, it allows them to die easier so that you can move them from areas if they get stuck. And it also allows you to well, the damage reduction it really doesn't make that much of a difference. Converts, in my opinion, are more useful for soaking up enemy bullets and keeping the attention off of you as a player, which is why I use them. I don't use them because they're great tools for killing enemies or anything like that. They're there to be bullet sponges. So I don't open the door behind me just yet because I don't want enemies to have a path to come down from the other side. So all the enemies are gonna flood in through this way, which is exactly how I wanted it, because I'll be able to better control the flow of enemies this way. I was trying to get a convert here. Decided to take the stronger of the two. There can only be one. Well, technically two, but the other one's upstairs doing whatever he's doing. Dutifully guarding that power box. Dutifully guarding the power box. There we go. I would have brought C4 secondary. Would have tried to pick up Jack of all trades ace to pick up C4 to blow open the store, save myself some time. However, I was playing around in this heist in stealth either yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday, and I noticed I didn't have a C4 charge on the door, so I was like, oh, okay, you can't blow it open, so that would be a waste of time for me to bring it, and a waste of points, honestly. I thought my game kind of lagged really hard right there for a second, and I wasn't quite sure what was going on. And I thought the game was going to crash, because it's been acting funny. MUI had a bit of a trouble with the newest update. I remember that there wasn't any staircases that spawned on that side of the casino, so I was going over to the other side of the casino so I could actually get the stairs that were embedded into the wall, so I could get up to the top of the VFD to the escape a little bit easier. Was running a little low on ammo for my stakeout though. Stakeout has really great pickup, that's why I picked it, and because it has a gigantic magazine. Kind of the same thing with the Yzma. The Yzma is just a more concealable version. Not as large of a magazine, but you know, like I said, it just has more concealment and it's better for crit builds. I just wanted to use the stakeout because I don't get to use it much, and I really like it. So, yeah, MUI was acting weird earlier. Managed to get a fix for it. This is just like one line of code that fixed it after the Henchman update. But thankfully, managed to throw the bag in and managed to escape. Alright, so that was Golden Grin Casino, no downs, 1 down solo, and as usual, thank you guys so much for watching.